The people in forensic, as the labs where the scientists work are commonly called, are used to evidence arriving from quite unexpected quarters, but none more unexpected, I think, than the one at the core, and I use that word advisedly, of this week's story. This was a Northern Ireland sectarian murder investigated by the Royal Ulster Constabulary and the Northern Ireland Forensic Science Laboratory. But in order to protect them, actors have been used throughout. What they say, however, was actually said by those they portray.
Get up.
Right, see you night then, boy.
Right.
Billy, come you in and eat your breakfast. Do you hear me? I'm sick of you and that old motor.
Right, lads. See you Finnegan Saturday night.
this house? How many did? Have you tasked the agencies?
Yes, we have.
I don't want anyone in here without a good reason.
It looked very much like a provo shooting, simply because the target was an off-duty member of the UDR.
Right, Keith. Listen, I want you to get a couple of constables down there right away, see if they've seen anything at all. Any sign of a car, anything like that.
The first thing I noticed was that it was excellent grouping. It wasn't a spray job. Whoever had done it was obviously an expert shot, despite the fact that it was at such close distance. I've seen policemen on the range, and I know from my own experience, the safest place is behind the target.
I could see where the grass had been flattened and where he'd moved from one point to another and fired. We had a fair idea from the calibre of the empty cartridge cases that the weapon was a Russian assault rifle. There were about 6 different types of them. We thought it was probably a Kalashnikov or a Semenov, which were the 2 types of weapon used by the provisionals at that time. We were in no doubt at all that it was a provisional killing.
Passengers travelling on British Airways Super Shuttle to London Heathrow, please proceed to gate number 9.
Good dog. Find the track. Where is his son?
The scent of a human will remain for about 24 hours, so the dog had no trouble in picking up the trail.
Track on.
Really, we were looking for anything that may have been left behind. A cigarette butt.
Good man.
Anything that was basically foreign to the scene.
Track on.
You could see from the number of rounds that had been fired that the gunman would have had to change magazine. So there was the possibility that he'd maybe perhaps dropped a magazine while running away.
Track. Good boy. Good boy. Good dog. Good boy. Good boy. There's the track. There's the track.
What do you make of that?
Where'd you find it?
Up in the trees.
God, what way was he eating at?
It wasn't the way I would have eaten an apple. It had been chawed. Whoever had bitten it had held it with one jaw and sort of gnawed it with the other.
But I didn't really attach any great significance to it. It might have evidential value, but it could have come from anywhere. It could have been thrown by the army, could have been thrown by a policeman even.
How you doing? 32 cartridge cases from the Craig murder. And an apple. I spoke to McIntyre at the laboratory. He was sceptical and a bit sarcastic. He wanted to know what we were trying to do with it and what evidential value we could get from an apple. But as far as I was concerned, there was definitely evidence in the bite marks.
What do you do with an apple? I had no experience at preserving plant tissue, and obviously I didn't want any shrinkage or distortion. It was done in a guess, really. I considered formaldehyde, but thought it might be too harsh, so I added some glycerol and alcohol.
I was presented with some spent cartridge cases and some spent bullets, which had been recovered from the scene. Cartridge cases are marked uniquely by the components in the gun, and no 2 firearms will produce the same markings. These components are the firing pin, the breech face, the extractor, and the ejector which forces the spent cases out of the mechanism. These markings are unique to this rifle, as unique as fingerprints. I compared exhibits from previous shootings with the cartridge cases from the Craig murders. It transpired that this same weapon had been used in 16 separate incidents, murders or attempted murders of police and UDR.
Through the various intelligence agencies, we were aware of an IRA unit operating in this area. We were convinced that this unit consisted of two brothers, Christopher and Thomas Cassidy.
Come on, he's here.
The third member was one James Riley. They had been identified at a number of shootings and they were on the run. They had been on the run for a number of years. They could have been living rough. They could have been living with sympathizers. They could have been living on a boat. They could have been across the border too, but we had no idea where they were. Absolutely no idea.
Is he going to be able to get... Ah, for Jesus' sake. What are you at?
Sorry.
Will you grow up and quit messing? Is he going to be able to get down on time? That's what I want to know. Listen, pay attention.
An active service unit would normally comprise 4 to 6 men. Now, to protect their identity, to perhaps lessen the chances of a tout, they will operate completely as a unit.
As soon as they turn right, there's a lighter coming.
They will decide themselves when to do a hit, the targets, how to do it.
As soon as they turn.
We had information that there was a fourth man, a Kelly, an Anthony Kelly. Well, you've only got to look at the electoral list for that area to see how many Kellys there are. Every other bloody house was an A. Kelly. There was Anthony Kelly, Anthony Joseph Kelly, Anthony James Kelly. They were cousins and brothers. Really, it was quite a headache. He could have been any one of them. We had to face it. The guy could be anywhere. All I could do was concentrate on finding the person who'd bitten the apple. What about some of your farm workers? Would they have been up there? Maybe
Well, the only one that would have been up a field there would be wee Andy with a tractor. As far as eating apples are concerned, he'd a bit too mean to buy apples.
Do you remember eating an apple?
No.
I interviewed the local farmer and farm workers. We found an apple up in the trees by the top road. And of course I interviewed the security forces who'd been at the scene. At the back of my mind, some big peeler had probably eaten it. Did you eat an apple?
No.
Do you see anyone eat one?
No.
What about you, Brian? You were up around the outer ring, no?
No.
Is there definitely you didn't see anyone eating one, throwing one down or anything? Good. I'd interviewed and eliminated the 50 or so people who were legitimately at the scene. There was the outside possibility it could have been thrown from a passing car, but it was found 30 feet from the roadway, so that was unlikely too. So we were eventually left in the position that it had to belong to the gunman or an associate. I think it was about then it really dawned on us we could have something here.
At this stage, we thought it best to bring the experts into it. And I had a friend at the London School of Dentistry.
Our individual would probably have a long, narrow face, a fairly large nose, and a high, sloping, intellectual forehead. He would have a protruding lantern jaw. He would have a high vault to his palate and might suffer from respiratory problems. He would be a tall, possibly thin individual. He would tend to have high shoulders and large hands and feet.
I said, well, yes, but I didn't really believe it. I mean, he'd given a detailed description of the person. He said he was tall, 5'10" to 6 foot, thin, gangly, you know, scratchy ankles without bending down, very high cheekbones, gaunt in around the cheeks, with this very peculiar mouth, and grade 2 or 3 occlusions of the jaws or something, whatever that means. Well, in my own mind, I suppose, being perfectly honest, I was very sceptical. I thought it was all Jack and Ori. We had photographs of the Cassidy brothers and Riley. None of them had deformed jaws or teeth. And it was quite apparent even to a layman that they weren't the ones. So that just left us with Anthony Kelly.
Delta from Papa 70, over.
70, send off Delta. Go ahead, over.
Roger, could have a vehicle...
Over a period of time, the security forces carried out P-checks on Kellys, personnel checks on vehicles. Any Anthony Kelly was brought in for questioning.
Right,
Is young Martin Brown still down in Tobermore?
Oh, he's still there. Been down there now 5 years.
Is he? Well, he kept trying to get up to Strandtown. Want to get on the football team. Open your mouth. Open your mouth. Show us your teeth. Thank you. Obviously, you can only take a case so far. And once we had circulated this fella Kelly, there was nothing we could do until we got a Kelly. Or, in fact, until we got one of the others. And frankly, I could never foresee that happening. Not unless they engaged the security forces or vice versa.
All Stanford passengers travelling on British Airways for shuttle flight from London Heathrow, please contact desks 4 and 5 in the check.
Take a good look. Where's the other boy? Golly, son, let's go. Go on.
Well, my checkbook, that's gone for sure. Aye, the TV's gone, and the place is in a wild mess. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now your car keys.
Hey, Tom. Ways up. Sick. Seat box.
6 from Alpha, confirm break-in at 8 Bankside Drive, Castle Bay, on arrival.
All this, my entire culture. Do you realise what you're asking me to do? one to talk about dressing funny.
Nah!
You see, each social worker must present some seems so long ago now.
Just sit there!
The spent cartridge cases matched those recovered from the fatal shooting of Craig and his son. The same firearm was used in both incidents.
He was wearing one of them jungle jackets. What do you call them? You know, a whole lot of pockets. And he was young. I didn't see his face now, you understand. He had one of them woolly masks on.
That unit don't need masks. They don't need disguises. Number one, they operate out of total fear, and number two, they were on the run anyway. Witnesses will not come forward and give evidence against them. There's no question about it. So they can operate quite openly.
Where the hell were you? Keep me standing at that door there. Get the door closed quick as well as you can.
There'll be very few people who directly tell the police anything, but we did have a way for them to talk to us without them having to reveal their identity.
This is a police confidential telephone. Please pick after the tone. I hear you're looking for Tony Kelly. Well, I think I've seen the man you're after. He's back at his mother's house in the Shintala estate. I hear he's running with the boys.
Hell could that be? She's married Joseph Marriott Swan and neighbours or something like that. Dear God. I'm coming. What the hell do you want?
We're here for Tony and Mrs.
He's not here, Tony's not here. Everything. Away the hell of this. Go on ahead. You don't have the time with it. Come on. You're not getting them. I'm telling you, come down downstairs and I'll get somebody for you. Come on down downstairs. Tony.
I'd heard they'd lifted an Anthony Kelly for the murder of a policeman. I thought, God, we must have him this time.
Empty your pockets?
I thought I'd won the pools. As soon as I saw him, I was 90% certain it was him. So I went in to interview him, basically to get a closer look at him, to get a longer look at him. It was uncanny. It was the exact image the dental professor described. He got him right in every detail. I couldn't believe it. I mean, how the hell had he done it?
Good morning, Miss Dunn. Come along in. Mrs. Softjohn. As an orthodontist, I've been straightening people's teeth for longer than I would care to admit. Over the years, one comes to recognize various clinical types and to associate a certain set of physical characteristics with a particular set of teeth. Open up. In fact, I will frequently walk into my clinic and, before looking inside the patient's mouth, will attempt to predict the relationship of their teeth by simply looking at their body build. And it is really quite surprising in how many cases one can get it right. With the apple, I had to reverse this process and work back from the tooth impressions to the body build. Fortunately, this individual's teeth were misaligned in a particularly characteristic way. It was clear, for example, that the top row of teeth were crowded and overlapping. The two central incisors were set at a rather V-shaped angle to each other. This indicated that this individual would have a V-shaped upper arch and a high vault to the palate of his mouth. Such people tend to have long, thin faces and large noses and respiratory problems of one kind or another. However, what interested me particularly about the apple was the way it had been eaten. Apparently, our individual had held it with his upper teeth and then broken a piece out of it with his lower teeth. Now, this indicated one of two things. Either that was just the way he ate apples, or alternatively, he found it impossible to bring his front teeth together. Now, there is a condition known as anterior open bite, which describes this inability. In children, it is quite common. Sometimes it is self-correcting, sometimes not. It is therefore very important to predict how the bite will develop. A computer study has confirmed that we can get it right 80% of the time. We have also learned that if the open bite remains untreated and persists into adulthood, such adults will tend to have other extreme features. They will tend to be tall, gangling, long-faced, lantern-jawed, exactly as I described, in fact.
Now, bring your head back. That's fine. Now open big and wide. And it goes, and it's a gooey sensation.
Impressions from Kelly's teeth were made into a cast, and these were then compared to the bite marks in the apple. According to an independent odontologist, there were no less than 16 points of similarity between the two. He said that the chance of someone else having exactly the same pattern of teeth was about 1 in 2 billion.
The real Anthony Kelly was convicted of the murders of the father and son. He was also convicted for his part in the murders of the 3 policemen. He was further implicated in 2 other terrorist incidents and is now serving a total of 7 life sentences.
A year later, the real John Riley was convicted of a quite separate murder. The Cassidy brothers disappeared and have never been heard of since.